Hello and welcome to the Dailies on Echo Television, where we keep you updated with all the stories that are dropping from the Nigerian newspaper today, being the 17th of April 2024. I am Sada Shadasho, and I'm doing the program alongside Rachel Tansy. Good morning.
Good morning, Sada.
How are you doing?
I'm fine. How about you?
I'm great, thank you so much. And to our viewers and followers, remember you can follow us via Facebook and YouTube. Drop your comment, your views on any of the story that is of interest to you this morning. And we shall be starting with the Guardian newspaper.
On the Guardian newspaper, biometrics and SIM registration deadlock. We have endless enrollment gulps 57 billion naira in 13 years amid complaints and protests. We have information showing that 13 years of SIM registration in Nigeria. We have NIMC issues 105 million NINs, and then we have SIM, NIN, BVN, PVC, immigration data, harmonization slows, and then we have constant biometric registration worries Nigerians. And then we have telcos connect 318 million telephone lines from 400,000 NITEL lines in 23 years. And then we also have SIM registration gulps over 57 billion naira as NCC commit 6.1 billion naira. Also 220 million active telephone lines, 99 million dormant lines. Okay, and then you can find details on page 6. Operators consider tariff hike to hedge rising OPEX. You can find details on page 20. Reps Caucus gives Tinubu ultimatum to end insecurity. Again, OB highlights insensitive underserving allocations in 2024 budget. PDP governors Atiku Wike camps intensify positions at Make or Neck. Lagos court sentences carpenter to life jail over defilement of primary 6 pupil. Details can be found on page 8. NCAA issues 3-day ultimatum for review of private aircraft operators and licenses. Security operatives uncover hideout of Yoruba Nation agitators in Ibadan. You can find details on page 7, and that's all the news on the Guardian newspaper.
On the Punch newspaper, we have $30 billion loss federal government may revoke unused oil well licenses. Detail of that can be found on page 21. And we have 27 states failed to access the 54.9 billion naira UPEP fund. Remember the money that was being allocated. So here we're seeing about 27 states have failed to actually have access to it. To find more detail of that, you can look up that story on page 12. Marketers excited as Dangote lowers diesel to 1,000 naira to a liter. You can find more as well in the paper. And here we have on the issue of naira abuse, where we saw EFCC have said they have arrested some celebrities. And here we're seeing part of which we have EFCC have arraigned Cubana chief priest today over the naira abuse. More detailed on page 14. The big story, federal government writes governors as agency predict flooding in 31 states, among which we have here the federal government agency have listed local governments in Akwa Ibom State, Lagos State, Adamawa State, Ogun State, Benue, and 26 other states as high flood risk areas. So I think it's important that you look up that story to see if your state is part of those and what can be done. Another writer following that story here says Benue demolishes Riverside building. Lagos have direct residents relocate, and then we have Sokoto, Edo, and other begin campaigns. So I think these campaigns need to be intensified. We remember or we will recall the rain that fell in Lagos, and then what happened last year where we saw some communities that were by the riverside and they were really affected by this flooding. And even if you're not living by the riverside, I think it's important that we clean or we clear the drainages so that our waterways can actually have where water to actually pass. Here we have a picture story where we have NDLEA destroyed 304,436 kilograms of illicit drugs in Lagos. More detail on page 4 and 5. PDP National Working Committee submits report on Wike as NEC meets on Thursday, which is tomorrow. And also the blood on Chidima's dress matches Ataga's DNA. Expert will recall the scenario that happened to the boss of a TV station where Chidima was being accused and all of that. And here we're seeing after so many investigations, the blood on her dress actually matched her. So that is to say she actually had a hand in his death. So you can look up that story as well on page 4. And we have UCH denies harboring Yoruba Nation agitator. We will record they have been actually trying to get them out of their hideout. So more detail of that story as well can be found on page 12, and that's all on the Punch newspaper.
So before we move to other papers, I just want us to quickly, I love this picture story on the Punch newspaper. Okay. Just seeing this much drugs being destroyed is happiness for me on so much level, because until you see what families, people, individuals are going through because of drug abuse, and to see that NDLEA have been able to intercept this much. I know with this much in their custody, there's this much out there because people are still being supplied. People are feeding their addictions and cravings still. So it means we still have this much outside. But the fact that we have this much being destroyed, either way, there is still work going on, and it means that we are hoping to see. We know how 2023 was. There was a lot of busting, one and drug barons, syndicates, and all of that, left, right, center, Lagos, at the airport, and all of that. And I just want NDLEA to intensify, because I wish, I'm looking forward to seeing a world, not just Nigeria, where we do not have drug addiction, abuse, where we do not have these things out there. There's nothing, it's just a lie in our head. There's nothing like taking a little bit of this substance. They are dangerous, they are addictive, you don't know what your gene is, you don't know what you're stepping into. So if we won't even have them completely out there, that is a safer world. And I'm just happy to see this much. I'm looking forward to more of this exercise to show that truly work is being done concerning the fight against drug trafficking and all of that in the country. And then blood on Chidima's dress match Ortega's DNA. For me, is not the story, is the work that is being done behind. Either way, it makes me feel and hopeful that we are improving in investigation and not letting things slide down. This might just be one. I know there are many killers out there working scot-free because nobody is willing to put in the work to say, you know what, this person has to be. The aim is at the end of the day that investigation be done, and if she's innocent, she walks free. If she's not, she's being called to book and then sentenced to serve her jail time and all of that. I am wanting to see a justice system like this in Nigeria. Yes, we might go further to see, well, he is wealthy, his family has the resources to push it and all of that. That is also a factor. However, we are having investigation going on. We have people that could take on DNA tests and all of that, meaning we have forensic, we have whatever it takes to say, okay, you know what, this blood matches this and all of that, and we're moving headway. When we begin to have these services available, then it's just a matter of time before it could be accessed by everybody, and then we will just have a better justice system. That is the take home for me, regardless of what would be the factor that this case is still being looked into. So I'm just looking forward to not a country that things don't slide and go, that criminals are working scot-free out there because nobody is putting in the work to investigate and, you know, call people to answer for their actions and all of that. So I'm just looking forward to, you know, the crime-free Nigeria and advanced Nigeria technologically when it comes to how we investigate and where we channel our resources when it comes to fighting crime and all of that.
You know, talking about the issue of Chidima, just like you said, I'm happy. I mean, this story is over 2 years now. If I could really recall clearly. And then I remember there was a time where, where we saw there was, I think, they did a beauty pageant in the Kirikiri prison, and she emerged as a winner. And a number of people said Chidima is having a cool time in prison and all of that. But I know that the correctional center is not meant to just make you feel totally condemned, but it's meant to correct you, rehabilitate you, and make you to be better. So when you come back, you'll be able to mingle with other people of the society. So just like you said, I'm happy. I mean, yesterday we saw that of Sylvester, where we saw they were saying that this was negligence coming from the parents and the doctors as well. And that was why we lost him, because there were underlying issues that were not dictated on time. And here also, we're seeing that of Chidima. So we're hoping to see that more stories, more investigation will be done. Just like you said, we'll not just slide things just by the side and say after all. And then also, if you look at the issue, both, in fact, I think for even Chidima, it was also negligence, because there were stories that she left home as early as 10, 11 years old. She was really living on her own. So you could say that she got exposed to things she was not supposed to get exposed to. And then regardless of how bad a child is, I mean, as a parent, we keep going back to the fact that parents have a role to play in the upbringing of a child. And just to link it with the issue of drugs, I mean, if parents do their work, we'll not be having issues of all of these. And then, but then we know there are kids that are bent or just being stubborn and all of that. But just like we said, we're happy that our system is providing, you know, the platform where we can see crime is being dealt with seriously. So we hope that whatever needs to be done should be done, and we hope to see more progress, more successes coming from the NDLE and also coming from our police and for all the investigation and all of that, things will be done properly eventually.
On the Nation newspaper, the big story: student loan scheme set for takeoff with 1.2 million beneficiaries. We have selected applicants to get upkeep stipends. This is a good one. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 2. Federal government targets 24-hour port clearance. Details can be found on page 2. And at the top of the Nation newspaper, IMF projects inflation decline to 23%, 18% in 2025 and 2026. So 23% will be for the year 2025, and then a decline continuously to 18% in 2026. Dangote refinery crashes diesel price to 1,000 naira per liter. How Tinubu is getting security economy right by Omokri. You can find details on page 4. EFCC arraigns Cubana chief priest for naira abuse today. Kaduna Assembly raises 13-man panel to probe finances on the El Rufai. Details can be found on page 4. First Ladies RHI empowers 120 Southwest women farmers with 60 million naira. Details can be found on page 3, and we have the picture story showing the First Lady also. And that's all the news on the Nation newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at what the Daily Sun have for us, where we have on the issue of the budget of 2024. Obi exposes more questionable allocations. He said that the 15 billion naira for the National Assembly Hospital, 5 times more than National Hospital and others. Again, we have 15.3 billion naira for NAS Library project, 15 times more than the 1 billion naira for National Library under the construction for over 20 years. So a number of things are coming out concerning the 2024 budget, things that were not being allocated properly. And then we've also saw where welfare was actually gobbing a huge amount of money, talking about the MDAs and all of that. So you can look up more detail of that story on page 25 of the Daily Sun newspaper. Again, the Daily Sun is still talking about the flood that is coming in, where we have federal government has placed 31 states on the red alert, warning Adamawa State, Akwa Ibom, Anambra, Bauchi, Bayelsa, Benue, Imo, Osun, Oyo, and others to expect the flooding. So you can do well to look up that on page 6. 60 PDP reps insist on Damagum sack. And then we have scored to move to pass confidence vote in party leadership. More trouble for El-Rufai's Kaduna Assembly resolved to probe expenditure project under his administration, while he is exposing governors of being responsible for either giving votes in local government areas. Yesterday we saw where he said the federal government is still paying subsidy for petrol, and here we're seeing that the Assembly have taken up to actually probe what he spent for projects under his administration. So you can look that up on page 26. Militant herdsmen kill 6 security operatives and 22 others in Benue State. Airstrike troops kill 42 terrorists, commanders and fighters in Borno State and Zamfara. Kano Anti-Graft Agency to arrange Ganduchi today amend charges, and we have the writer following that story that says APC dismisses the suspension. Who recorded said that was the work of some people that were just acting. So you can look up more on page 26 and 27. Tinubu unveils Nigerian single window project, target 24-hour port clearance. Downside of the paper, Nigeria orders need $600 billion investment to achieve clean hydrogen energy, coming from the World Bank, detailed on page 2. And we have a picture story here on the front page of the paper. You can do well to grab the paper in more detail of any other story that is of interest to you.
On the Daily Times newspaper, 31 states, 148 local government areas risk severe floods, federal government warns. NURC electricity report, the big story on the paper, international customers owing billions to Nigerian gencos for the third quarter of 2023, as federal government pays 205 billion naira as subsidy. You can find details on page 4. On transparency, Anambra East local government becomes first Nigerian member of OGP. Let's start with the details on the front page. Kaduna Assembly to probe El-Rufai allies. Federal government suspends 3 private jet operators license over permit abuse. On Yoruba Nation, UCH dismisses allegation of its premises as AMRI. You can find details on page 5. NIMED Agri Ministry strengthen partnership towards improving production. Details can be found on page 2, and that's all the news on the Daily Times newspaper.
On this day newspaper, we have Wike backs Damagum to retain seat as governor scramble for his replacement. The writer says PDP won't employ and post to regain power over the 2027 Wabara declares. Thursday NEC is all about acting national chairman. Northern Central leaders endorse swap for party member 1 office. More detail found on page 10. 021 seed of Bakassi revisited, vows to seek compensation. More detail on page 8. A major move, Dangote crashes diesel price 1,000 naira to a liter from 1,002. And we have Nigeria has lost $34 billion in oil output decline from delay separate ExxonMobil deal, with the rider says production from asset fell to 120,000 barrels per day from 6,000 barrels per day. In 6 countries, output could rise to 5 million barrels per day in 18 months. More detail also on page 10. Kaduna Assembly set up 13-member committee to probe El-Rufai's administration. And the picture story, the launch of Renew Hope Initiative, Women Agriculture Support Program, where we can see the First Lady together with Governor Abiodun of Osun State. So you can do well to find more detail of stories of interest to you in the paper.
On the Matrix, Tinubu launches National Single Window Initiative to enhance revenue generation. Champions League, 2 teams qualify for semi-final, one which is PSG. You can find details on page 16. Nigeria's economy in right direction, Finance Minister Wale Edun boasts. Says exchange rates stabilizing, revenue up, food inflation slowing. But we saw a different thing yesterday where we are seeing a jump of over 3% on food inflation. You can start with the details on the front page. The big story is on fuel subsidy. Fresh controversies emerge. The writer saying another insider says federal government to spend over 7.2 trillion naira on fuel subsidy by May. Says NNPC remains sole importer of petrol because there is subsidy on petrol, so price has to be pegged. Federal government reserves right to pay fuel subsidy intermittently to cushion hardship on Nigeria. This is a statement from Tinubu's advisor. You can find details on page 2. FCCPC to intensify price monitoring in markets as Naira appreciate against dollar. Lagos, Anambra, 29 other states at risk of heavy flooding from April, a warning from the federal government. Federal government begins disbursement of 200 billion naira grants to businesses. And we have on entertainment, Cubana chief priest detained ahead of arraignment today. $350 million World Bank loan El-Rufai to face Kaduna Assembly's probe panel to explain how fund was spent. Dangote crashes diesel to 1,000 naira per litre. And that's all the news on the Matrix newspaper.
Just before we move to the next paper, you know the story concerning the FCCP to intensify price monitoring in market as Naira appreciate against dollar. And there have even been numbers that have been there in case you go to buy goods and then they have actually increased the price. You can actually call this number so they could actually arrest it. I remember there was a time the government is working towards making sure that they monitor the prices of goods. You will see that you go to get something and then it's either the person selling increases the price outrageously. So I'm happy that the government is actually looking into intensifying monitoring of prices because I mean yesterday you and I were looking at inflation, especially when it comes to commodities in the market, and I think it's very important that we take this. For a layman, he might not really know what it is, so I just think that more maybe sanitization needs to be done, awareness concerning these numbers. They should make it available as much as possible so that everybody can have access to it. If it means they should be on billboards and all of that, so that just in case you go to get goods and then the prices are outrageous, you can actually call and then you have those people being arrested. I think it's important just so we have INEC checking and making sure that you know what whatever NAFDAC rather, making sure that whatever you go to buy, they make sure that it's not expired, they can consume it and all of that. I think it's the same way the government needs to also do concerning the FCC, which is actually Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission. So I'm really happy I'm seeing them working.
It's important they're working because I think one of the fear of every Nigerian is that once things go high, they never come down. Yeah, exactly. Although when you look at it, we've always had the dollar gradually increase. That is the naira losing its value as against the dollar. But this is the first time we've seen it go that high and drop. So it's expected that if the reason was, okay, dollar, because that's what you hear every time you go to the market, now that it is dropping its strength as against the naira, then it's expected that we see it drop. And then the question is, do people know out there? Because I think that's where the bulk of the work is, that people need to know that there are people watching and implementing, that people providing goods and services that have been complaining about the dollar should now start reducing their prices because the dollar has gone low as against its strength to the naira. So I'm just hoping that people do know that, and I just hope that someone out there is watching us this morning and saying, okay, so there is something like that. I need to spread the word. I need to spread the message that, you know what, when I go to the market, I'm supposed to see different prices because we are seeing a strength when it comes to our naira against the dollar. You should know that there are people watching. Now I know also. So when I go to the market and I'm seeing an outrageous price that shouldn't be like that, I should be able to, you know, contact somebody. So let's spread the word out there that there are people in the market watching out against exploitation by marketers.
Exploiting people. Well, let's take a look at the next paper, which is the First News newspaper, and we have on Ganduji's suspension. APC petition, the IGP declares action criminal. More detail can be found inside the paper. Still on First News newspaper, pro-Wiki lawmakers plot to pass confidence vote on Damagon fails as PDP reps caucus meeting ends in commotion. And on 2027, stop incessant contest for PDP presidential ticket, group tells Atiku. Federal government begins disbursement of the 200 billion naira palliative loans. You can find more inside the paper. Dangote crashes price of diesel to 1,000 naira per litre. 28 killed in fresh attack on Benue community. And on Naira abuse, which is the big story for the First News newspaper, another celebrity, Cubana chief priest risks jail to be arranged today. Faces 3-count charge for spraying tampering with Naira notes at social function. And I've seen a number of people also abusing it, even from some of our governors that were either. So I think it's important we should not be selective. I'm thinking that's I'm talking about the EFCC. They shouldn't be selective on who they arrest. We keep saying that the law is king, therefore every other person is under the law. So if you are caught temporary, I mean, you see some of these wedding functions on social media and all of that, people tampering on our Naira notes, you know, spraying and all of that. And that's why we have certain functions that when you go, they tell you no spraying. If you want to give the couple or you want to give whoever, you put it in an envelope. But you know the way we are in Nigeria and Africa, we just have this way of,
we want to show
you know,
off.
when you spray, it actually gives you this. So we have to watch that because EFCC are also watching. Still on First News newspaper, NNPP crisis worsen as fractions suspend Kanu governor for 6 months. Kwankwasia move reacts, say it's a joke taking too far, they are clowns. You can find more detail of that story in the paper. NCAA withdraws 3 private jet operators permit for running commercial flights. Gandoji in fresh trouble as Kanu files new corruption charges against him. Akoko APC leader Tip Ayedatiwa as consensus candidate, says party chief, as group fuels 800 Okada in house-to-house campaign. Shegu Olatunji ordeals military giving Tinubu's government bad image, says Bola Wule. Warn against soldiers usurping police duties. You can find more detail of that, and we've had people talking about this over and over, where we have clash from either the military and the police force. So it's important they look into that. We still have feature story where we see the First Lady concerning empowering women in the southwest of the country. And that's all on First News newspaper.
On Daily Independent, PDP reps divided as party holds make or break neck meeting. 60 PDP reps insist Damagun must go, call for a North Central chairmanship. Disciplinary action against Nyesom Wike. You can find all the details inside the paper. PDP caucus sets sights on 2027 presidency with new strategy. Kaduna Assembly probes El-Rufai's administration. NCAA suspends 3 private jet owners over violation of certificate. NNPP faction slams 6-month suspension on Kano governor. Still on Okwama, Governor Diri urges Igbo Motori residents to return home. Details can be found on page 30. Kano Anti-Corruption Agency files fresh charges against Ganduje. Herdsmen kill 22 persons, 6 livestock guards in Benue. IMF projects Nigeria's growth to rise to 3.3% in 2024. Details can be found on page 30. Export-import hurdles. Tinubu targets bridging $4 billion loss to bureaucratic bottlenecks. You can start with the details on the front page. Federal government suspends mining activities in OAU, OAU-THC. You can find details on page 30. And then we have a picture story where we can see the NGX partnering with Seplat Energy. And that's all the news on Daily Independent.
Right, before we move further with other paper analysis, we would love to take a break at this moment and let you chew the stories, and when we come back, we will continue with the paper review. Please stay tuned with us. welcome back. If you're just tuning in, it's still the Dailies, and we have been looking at a number of stories on the paper where they have come to the rescue of people, where marketers are happy that right now he has crashed the price of diesel to 1,000 naira to a liter. And then we're saying that yes, this is still out there arresting celebrities, where we're seeing that Cubana has been arrested and then for naira abuse. And then we have other stories on the paper where we see the First Lady saying how she can empower women in agriculture at the Southwest. So these are many other stories of what we have been looking on the papers. We'd love you to be part of the program. Please do well. Drop your comment and your views on the story. You could share also with your loved ones so they can be part of what is happening today. And then we will be looking at the next paper, which is the Voice of Liberty. On the Voice of Liberty, Naira abuse, EFCC to range Cubana chief priest today. More detail found in the paper. Severe flood threatening 31 states, 148 local government areas, coming from the minister. And coming from Kano State, Anti-Corruption Agency files fresh charges against Ganduchi. Kaduna Assembly set to probe Nasir El-Rufai administration. The Kaduna State House of Assembly has established a committee tasked with examining financial transactions, loans, grants, and project execution in former Governor Nasir El-Rufai's administration. More detail found inside the paper. I foresee more hardship in Nigeria, coming from Pre-Made Daily. You can read more detail of why he said so. 15 billion naira budget allocation for National Assembly Hospital insensitive, coming from the Labour Party presidential candidate Peter Obi. And on the Yoruba Nation, police launch manhunt for suspended sponsor Onitiri Abiola. More detail found inside the paper. And El-Rufai is saying bad leaders, not hunger or exchange rates, are Nigerians' problem. We saw that yesterday also, where a former president was also talking about bad leadership, the reason why the country is not progressing. You can read more detail of why he said that and other stories on the front page of the paper. And that's all on the Voice of Liberty.
On Nigerian Tribune, division in PDP reps set tone ahead neck. G60 squares up to House Minority Leader resists confidence vote as caucus issues 3 months ultimatum to Tinubu to end insecurity. Kaduna Assembly sets up 13-man panel to probe El-Rufai's 8 years. Dangote crashes diesel price to 1,000 naira per litre. On land dispute, armed men attack Ikiti local government secretariat and injure workers. EFCC to arraign Cubana chief priest over naira abuse today. Kano Anti-Graft Commission files fresh charges against Kanduje. NCAA suspends license of 3 private jet owners. Still on Nigerian Tribune, Lagos, Rivers, Anambra, 28 other states at high risk from April. This is concerning flood. Federal government suspends mining activities within OAU and its environs. Details can be found on page 3. On security, Tinubu is turning fear to hope, a statement from Omokri. Bandits killed 26 in Benue. North-South battle over chairmanship of National Assembly Pension Board. Intrigue delaying takes off board 1 year after. Details can be found on page 4. Federal government commences disbursement of 200 billion naira palliative loan to manufacturers and others. Details can be found on page 7, and that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
On Nigerian News Direct, Naira mutilation, EFCC goes after more celebrities arraign Cubana chief priest. Fidelity Bank grows profit by 131.5% in the first half of 2023. Dangote refinery crashes diesel price to 1,000 naira, and federal government to revoke license of unutilized oil well owners. And on presidential conditional grants, we have commenced disbursement of 200 billion naira grant to beneficiaries coming from the minister. The big story, Tinubu launches policy to curb over $4 billion revenue lost to import and export infraction to boost trade and generate $2.7 billion revenue. More detail found on page 2. Naira trades above 1,000 Naira to a dollar in some segments of the parallel market, appreciate by 6.28% on the NEFEX. This is a report. APC National Working Committee react to alleged suspension of their national chairman as the party chieftain and others call Ganduji to step down. More detail in the paper. And we have a picture story here where we can see the president launching the policy. More detail of any other story can be found in the paper, and that's all on Nigerian News Direct.
On New Telegraph, the big story, Damakun PDP reps caucus meeting ends in commotion as pro-Wiki lawmakers move to give acting national chair confidence vote fails. We must take back Aso Rock in 2027. This is from PDP caucus leaders' personal interest destroying PDP, a statement from Cheruma. Party will overcome present challenges. This is a statement from the board of trustees, from the chairman of the board of trustees for the PDP. And then you can find details on page 3, 5, and 29. IMF raises Nigeria's economic growth forecast by 0.3%, says inflation will fall to 26%. Dangote crashes diesel price to 1,000 Naira per litre. Flush out bad police officers, now Apabio tells IGP. Kaduna Assembly sets up panel to probe El Rufai. Details can be found on page 2 and 8. 200 billion Naira palliative loan. Federal government begins payment of 50,000 Naira trade grant to nano businesses. Morka, why Ganduje's arraignment may create constitutional crisis. Details can be found on page 2 and 8. Tinubu unveils single window facility to curb $4 billion loss. This is concerning maritime. You can find details on page 8. NCAA suspends licenses of 3 private jet owners. Alleged Naira abuse. EFCC to arraign Cubana chief priest today. On 2024 budget, 15 billion Naira National Assembly hospital allocation, more than 6 major teaching hospitals own. This is coming from Peter Obi. You can find details on page 3. Flood alerts 31 states, 148 councils rigs heavy flooding. This is a warning from the federal government. Federal government paying about 600 billion Naira monthly for fuel subsidy now, and this is a statement from Rain Oil CEO. Details can be found on page 2. At the downside of the paper, we have a study that says going to bed late tied to childhood obesity. You can find details on page 7, and that's all the news on the paper.
On the Vanguard newspaper, Dangote Refinery slashes diesel price by 16.6% to 1,000 Naira per litre. Kwama to Uwu, families' chief demand detain monarch's whereabouts. More detail on page 5. We have Vice President Sheitima, Governor Bago, Ayo, Tariba, and others to grace the Vanguard Economic Summit. You can find more detail of that summit on page 8. The PDP neck meeting, Atiku Wiki's loyalists in battle for party control. Detail found on page 8. Food inflation slowing, federal government revenue rises coming from the Finance Minister Edu. He says target more foreign investment inflow. IMF raises forecast for Nigeria's economic growth to 3.3%. Initially it was 3, but right now it's been increased to 0.3%. So more detail found on page 19. NCAA suspend permit of 3 private jet operators. Kaduna Assembly begins probe of ex-Governor El-Rufai's government. And fresh headers attack where we have about 26 security personnel, mourners and others were being killed in Benue State. We hope security agencies are doing something because it's becoming alarming, the rate at which people are being killed in Benue State and communities. You can find more detail of that on page 20. Kano Anti-Graft Agency files fresh charges against Ganduji. We have a column coming from Efe Babalola where he said artificial intelligence is a technology of immense benefit even to legal research and grafting. However, it should not be employed indiscriminately. You can read more detail on page 22. And also for sports, where we're seeing Rangers and Abia Warriors during a match where they are 3 to the The scores there are 3-2, where we have Rangers win Oriental, thereby maintaining the MPFL leadership. For sport lovers, you can do well to read more detail of that story on page 29. And here we have
the paper, PDP NEC meeting, 24 hours to go. Atiku Wike camps go for broke. Moves to pass a vote of confidence on Damagun fails. Reps caucus meeting ends in commotion. We're united, indivisible, coming from lawmakers. PDP governors meet today. Details can be found on page 4. IMF raises Nigeria's growth forecast to 3.3%. Respite as Dangote crashes diesel price to 1,000 naira per litre. Tinubu launches national single window project. Save rice processors from collapse, stakeholders beg the federal government. And then we have a picture story where we can see Seplat celebrating 10 years of being listed on the NGX. And that's all the news, all leadership newspaper.
On the Blueprint newspaper, where we have still the probe that is happening at the Kaduna Assembly, commences to probe the El-Rufai tenure, creating wealth through GTIL lab, the RMRDC experience. More detail found on page 17. Also, Goldie Eaglets camp open today with 51 players. This is for sport lovers. More detail can be found in the paper. The big story, FRS as single window project launch. Nigeria lose $4 billion to import-export inefficiency annually. We have NSWP catalyst for 7% GDP growth, $2.7 billion to the nation's economy. Popoto will tackle challenge and stimulate the FDI. This is coming from President Tinubu. NAFS strike eliminate 3 terrorist commanders and 30 others in Borno State. And the 2024 flood forecast, we have 148 local government areas in 31 states, 249 others, and the FCT at risk of flooding. A warning coming from the federal government, where we have some of the states that are prone to flood. We have Bayelsa, Cross River, Delta, Lagos, and 3 others to experience coastal riverine flooding. So they said from April down to November, it's going to be a very tough one, especially for rain. So if you're living by the riverine area, it's important that you take note of all of this. NCAA hampers 3 private jet operators for Kabu service. More detail found on page 21. Federal government must factor in rice processors to avert food crisis next year. Ignore those agitating for Yoruba nation, Kuni tells Nigerians. And on illegal convention, NNPP slams 6-month suspension on Governor Yusuf. You can find detail of that on page 15. And that's all on Blueprint newspaper.
On Nature News, Water Resources Minister warns of impending floods in 31 states. SGF urges more funding for climate actions in Nigeria. Ahead of the Azerbaijan Environment Minister, stakeholders dissect COP28 outcome. You can find more details on page 5. The big story, climate change. Governor Yusuf to plant 10 million trees in Kano. We are seeing that Nature News advocates planting of 5 billion trees in Nigeria. You can find details on page 3, and it can start with you. You can plant more trees in your house. There's nothing wrong with planting trees. We need it for air, and we need to save our ecosystem. Still on the paper, Hamrov partners train 3,000 Lagos youths in glass recycling. Agri Ministry partners NIMED on climate forecasting for food security. We have a fact check. Is urine the best skincare treatment? You can find details on page 13. African Development Bank Adesina, Tanzanian president, to co-chair summit on clean cooking in Africa. At the downside of the paper, Derek Underwood, England and Kent Greatest dies at 78. Details can be found on page 20. We have a picture story where we can see Governor Yusuf actually planting a tree. And that's all the news on Nature News newspaper.
On the Business Times newspaper, we have CBN mops up 7.7 trillion naira from the NTB OMO in the first quarter of 2024. Global growth will hold steady by 3.2% in 2024 to 2025, a report coming from IMF. Federal government suspend mining activities within OAU and Enviros. The big story here, defending the Naira, expert warn against ongoing depletion of foreign reserve, charged the federal government and the CBN to focus on other ways. And then borrowing to defend the Naira has potential consequences coming from Adaka. You can find that on page 2. NIMED Agri Minister to strengthen partnership towards improving agricultural production. NECA wants monitoring of inflation dynamics. Owando, Midview Airline 18 orders their NGX on corporate earnings. Nigeria to generate $2.7 billion as Tinubu launches single window initiative. More detail found inside the paper on page 2, and that's all on the Business Times newspaper.
On Punch Sport Extra, the big story we have, I didn't know this will happen in my lifetime. Boniface's grandmother on the Zero to Hero story of the new Bundesliga champion, where we can see picture stories of him then and now, and then grandma on a plane. You can find details on page 7. Keeper who conceded 31 goals in single game. You can find details on page 6. And then we have Mbappe bags brace as Parisians advance, where we can see them beating Barcelona, having a comeback of 4-1-0, giving them an aggregate of 6-4. Man City today versus Real Madrid, and this is for the semi-finals. Also, we are seeing champions plot serial winners exit. And then we have Bavarians Gunners clash after domestic war, that is Bayern Munich versus Arsenal. Osimhen win for Sparks Napoli shake-up plans. Details can be found on page 7. Econ donates allowances to acquire bomb kits. We have Ajaba Anthony Joshua on WBC title collision curse. And then we have angry Pochettino slams players over penalty raw. If you watch the match, you saw what happened. And then we have Indika discharged from hospital after collapse. And on Future Star, Lawal fighting poverty with football. At the downside of the paper, ITTF, Aruna returns to top 20 in latest ranking. Djokovic admits trophyless start to season strange. More details can be found on page 3, and that's all the news on Punch Sports Extra.
Well, that's how far we can go on the program this morning. Thank you, Rachel, for doing that.
You're welcome, Sally.
And also thank you to the crew members, thank you to our followers and our viewers for always making it out to watch the dailies. Until we come tomorrow again, to have a great day.